Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. We are now in lecture 8, Distributed Database Management Systems, DDBMS Part 1. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe distributed database DDB, DDBMS, distributed processing, shared disk, shared memory and shared nothing of parallel DBMS and explain the advantages and disadvantages of DDBMS. In a normal database or DBMS approach, there will be a lot of systems and users who will access the same database at the same time. The database approach is an improvement on the shared file solution, as the use of a database management system DBMS provides facilities for querying, data security and integrity, and allows simultaneous access to data by number of different users. In DBMS approach, database is located at the server, processing is split between server and client, and less data traffic on the network. Usually, a company might have multiple branches all over the places in running their business. They might use centralized database to manage the operations in all of the branches. Centralized database system is commonly used in the organizations such as banks, schools, and colleges to manage all their data in an appropriate manner. By definition, centralized database is a database system which resides at one of the nodes of a network of computers. Only one single location holds the database that can easily be accessed from any location by using internet connections such as WAN and LAN. Even though it's still being used, centralized database has so many problems. The first one is performance degradation as number of remote sites grew. Sites grew means more user. Performance of the database might be degraded because of that. The second one is high cost to maintain large centralized databases. The third one is reliability problems with one central site. Lots of users, you might not be able to access the database at peak hours. The site within database can become bottleneck. The site's network might be congested by too many requests from users. Data availability is not efficient. You need to wait if the data is being used by another user. Another possible availability problem is if the site with the database goes down, there can be no data access. Hence, to overcome the problem of centralized DBMS, DDBMS is introduced. Instead of having one database at one centralized site, the database is being fragmented into few parts and being located at few sites. Distributed database is a logically interrelated collection of shared data and a description of this data physically distributed over a computer network. Distributed DBMS or DDBMS is a software system that permits the management of the distributed database and makes the distribution transparent to user. This is the concept of DDBMS. The first one is, it is a collection of logically related shared data. The second one, data split into fragments. The fragments may be replicated, and the fragments or the replicas allocated to sites. The sites are linked by a communication network. Data at each site is under control of a DBMS, and each DBMS participates in at least one global application. Parallel DBMS is a different method from DDBMS. It is defined as a DBMS running across multiple processors and disks that is designed to execute operations in parallel whenever possible in order to improve performance. There are three main architectures for parallel DBMS. The first one is shared memory. It is a tightly coupled architecture in which multiple processors within a single system share system memory. The second one is shared disk. It is a loosely coupled architecture optimized for applications that are inherently centralized and require high availability and performance. And the third one is shared nothing. Often known as massively parallel processing (MPP), is a multiple processor architecture in which each processor is part of a complete system with its own memory and disk storage. Let's take a look on advantages of DDBMS. The first one is reflects organizational structure. Many organizations are naturally distributed over several locations. The company headquarters may wish to make global inquiries involving the access of data at all or number of a branch. Second, it can improve shareability and local autonomy. The geographical distribution of an organization can be reflected in the distribution of the data. Users at one site can access data stored at other sites. Data can be placed at the site close to the users who normally use that data. Next, improve availability. In a centralized DBMS, a computer failure terminates the operations of the DBMS. However, a failure at one site of a DDBMS or a failure of communication link making some sites inaccessible does not make the entire system inoperable. Improve reliability. As data may be replicated so that it exists at more than one site, the failure of a node or a communication link does not necessarily make the data inaccessible. Improve performance. As the data is located near the site of greatest demand and given the inherent parallelism of distributed DBMSs, speed of database access may be better than the achievable from remote centralized database. Next is economics. It is now generally accepted that it costs much less to create a system of smaller computers with the equivalent power of a single large computer. Modular growth. In a distributed environment, it is much easier to handle expansion. New sites can be added to the network without affecting the operation of other sites. This flexibility allows an organization to expand relatively easily. Next is integration. It is important for organizations to be able to integrate software components from different vendors to meet their specific requirements. The last one is remaining competitive. A lot of latest systems are using the DBMS concept. Hence, to stay relevant, company needs to follow the current trend of the business. Let's take a look on disadvantages of DDBMS. The first one is complexity. A DDBMS that hides the distributed nature from the user and provides an acceptable level of performance, reliability and availability is inherently more complex than a centralized DBMS. The fact that data can be replicated also adds an extra level of complexity to the DDBMS. If the software does not handle data replication adequately, there will be degradation in availability, reliability and performance compared with the centralized system. The second one is cost. Increased complexity means that we can expect the procurement and maintenance costs for a DDBMS to be higher than those for a centralized DBMS. Next is security. In a centralized system, access to the data can be easily controlled. However, in a distributed DBMS, not only does access to replicated data have to be controlled in multiple locations, but the network itself has to be made secure. Integrity control more difficult. Database integrity refers to the validity and consistency of stored data. Integrity is usually expressed in terms of constraints, which are consistency rules that the database is not permitted to violate. Enforcing integrity constraints generally requires access to a large amount of data that defines the constraint, but which is not involved in the actual update operation itself. In a DDBMS, the communication and processing costs that are required to enforce integrity constraints may be prohibitive. Next is lack of standard. This lack of standards has significantly limited the potential of DDBMS. There are also no tools or methodologies to help users convert a centralized DBMS into a DDBMS. Lack of experience. General-purpose DDBMSs have not been widely accepted, although many of the protocols and problems are well understood. The last one is database design more complex. Besides the normal difficulties of designing a centralized database, the design of a distributed database has to take account of fragmentation of data, allocation of fragments to specific sites, and data replications. So I guess that's all for now. See you again in the next part. Thank you.